The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm, golden hue through the kitchen window as I busied myself with preparations for Rachel's visit. My hands moved mechanically, slicing vegetables for a salad, while my mind drifted to memories of our childhood. The air was thick with the scent of garlic sautéing in olive oil, a fragrant reminder of home. Yet, as I chopped, each slice felt like a reminder of the years that had passed between us, years filled with silence, misunderstandings, and an aching distance that had formed like a chasm. "Joanna, are you okay?" Mark's voice broke through my reverie. He leaned against the doorframe, concern etched on his face. "Yeah, just thinking," I replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "About Rachel." His brow furrowed. "Are you sure you want to do this? It's been a long time since you two, well, since things were good." I tossed a glance over my shoulder. "I know, but we're family. I have to try." Mark nodded, though I could tell he remained unconvinced. He stepped into the kitchen, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind. "Just remember, it's okay to set boundaries. You don't have to let her back in completely." His words washed over me, a gentle reminder of the protective barrier we had built around our lives. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that I owed it to Rachel to attempt this reunion, to face the ghosts of our past. As I stirred the pot on the stove, memories of our childhood flooded my mind. The laughter, the arguments, the moments that had once bonded us so tightly. I recalled the last time we had seen each other, the way her eyes had glistened with unshed tears, and how our parting words had been sharp and bitter. I pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. The doorbell rang, shattering the tension that had settled in the room. My heart raced, drumming loudly in my chest. I exchanged a quick glance with Mark, who gave me an encouraging nod. "Here goes nothing," I muttered to myself, wiping my hands on a dish towel before heading to the door. As I opened it, Rachel stood there, her figure framed by the fading sunlight. She looked different, yet undeniably familiar. Her hair cascaded down her shoulders in loose waves, and her eyes sparkled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "Joanna," she breathed, and the way she said my name sent a rush of warmth through me. "Rachel," I replied softly, stepping aside to let her in. We embraced awkwardly, the years of distance palpable between us. "It's been a while," she said, pulling back to examine my face. "You look good." "Thanks," I replied, not quite knowing how to respond. "You too. I mean, it's nice to see you." The tension lingered like a heavy fog as we moved into the living room. I gestured towards the couch, and we both sat down, the space between us echoing the emotional distance we had yet to bridge. "So, how have you been?" I ventured, searching for common ground. Rachel smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Busy with work. You know how it is." I nodded, feeling the weight of our shared history pressing down on us. "I've been good, Mark, and I have been, well, we're doing well." "Good to hear." She fidgeted, her fingers twisting together. "I've missed you, Joanna." The sincerity in her voice tugged at my heart. "I've missed you too." The admission felt like both a relief and a burden. As the evening wore on, we began to reminisce about our childhood. Stories of summer days spent playing in the backyard, of secrets shared under the stars. Laughter bubbled up between us, a fragile bridge being constructed over the years of silence. But beneath the laughter, there was an undeniable tension, an unspoken weight that neither of us dared to acknowledge. "Do you remember the treehouse we built?" Rachel asked, her eyes lighting up. "How could I forget? You always wanted to make it bigger." I chuckled. "Yeah, and you were always the one afraid of heights," she teased, nudging my shoulder playfully. The warmth of nostalgia wrapped around us, but just as quickly as it came, it faded, leaving behind a lingering uncertainty. As night fell, we moved outside to the backyard, where the stars twinkled above like distant promises. "Isn't it beautiful?" Rachel murmured, gazing up. "Yeah, it is," I agreed, feeling the cool grass beneath my bare feet. We fell into a comfortable silence, the air thick with unspoken words. Then, in a moment that felt both electric and surreal, Rachel turned to me, her expression shifting. "Joanna, there's something I need to—" Before she could finish, her lips were on mine, warm and soft. My heart stopped. Shock coursed through me, paralyzing my thoughts as I stood frozen in place, unsure of how to respond. The kiss lingered in the air between us, heavy with confusion and a multitude of emotions, leaving me grappling with a tumult of feelings I had never anticipated. The taste of Rachel's kiss lingered in my mind like a forbidden fruit, both intoxicating and unsettling. I paced the living room, my heart racing as I replayed that moment over and over. What had just happened? It felt electric, yet it was laced with confusion and fear. I couldn't just let it go. I had to confront her. I found her sitting on the porch, looking out at the garden, her expression contemplative, as if she were lost in thoughts that mirrored my own. "Rachel," I called out, my voice trembling slightly. She turned, her eyes wide and uncertain. "We need to talk." "About what?" she asked, feigning nonchalance, but I could see the flicker of anxiety in her gaze. "About what happened last night." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "You kissed me." "Why?" Her cheeks flushed and she looked down, tracing her fingers along the wooden railing. "It was a moment of weakness, Joanna. I didn't mean to cross any lines." "Cross any lines?" I echoed, my voice rising. "Rachel, that was more than a line. It was a boundary I didn't even know existed between us." "I know it's complicated," she said softly, her eyes finally meeting mine. "But I felt so close to you again." And I interrupted her, my frustration spilling over. "Close? After years of being apart. You think a kiss makes everything okay? You think it erases the hurt and the distance." "I didn't say that," she defended, her tone defensive. "But I felt something. Something real." I shook my head, my mind racing. "How can you say that? You just dropped back into my life. And now everything is a mess. I have a husband, Rachel. A family." "I know," she sighed, her voice heavy with regret. "But what if this is an opportunity? To explore us? Explore us?" My heart sank at her words. The notion sent a shiver down my spine, and I could feel the weight of the implications. "What are you asking me to do? Leave Mark?" Rachel stepped closer, her voice a whisper now. "I'm not asking you to leave him. I just want us to be honest with each other about our feelings." "Honest?" I repeated, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. "What does that even mean? Do you want me to just forget about everything? About our childhood? What tore us apart?" "I don't want to erase anything," she insisted, her eyes pleading. "I just want to understand what this is between us. Can't we figure it out together?" I took a step back, the distance between us feeling like a chasm I couldn't cross. "I need time, Rachel. I can't just jump into this. My life isn't that simple." "Joanna," she said, her voice breaking. "I've missed you. I've missed us. It's been so lonely without you." As I looked into her eyes, I felt the walls I had built around my heart starting to crumble. "I don't know if I can do this," I whispered, grappling with the chaos within me. Later, sitting across from Claire in our favorite coffee shop, I felt a weight on my chest. "You won't believe what happened with Rachel," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What now?" Claire leaned in, her eyes narrowing with concern. "She kissed me," I blurted out, the confession tumbling from my lips. Claire's reaction was immediate. She nearly dropped her cup. "Oh my God. Joanna, you're kidding, right?" "No, I'm not." And now she wants to explore whatever this is between us. "Explore?" Claire's brow furrowed. "Joanna, you have a husband. This could ruin everything." "I know," I sighed, rubbing my temples. "But I can't stop thinking about it. I feel so confused." "Confused?" "Joanna, this is serious. You need to think about Mark. What would he say if he found out?" I leaned back in my chair, the weight of her words heavy on my shoulders. I don't want to hurt him, Claire. But, Rachel, she makes me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in years. Feelings can be dangerous, Claire warned, her eyes piercing through me. You have to be careful. This isn't just about you and Rachel. It's about your family, your marriage. I nodded but felt a surge of defiance rising within me. But what if I want to explore it? What if it means something? Then you need to talk to Mark, Claire pressed. Be honest with him, even if it hurts. Otherwise, you'll just spiral deeper into this mess. As I sat there, a whirlwind of thoughts raging in my mind, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the edge of a cliff, peering into a darkness that beckoned me. The evening air was thick with tension as I tried to put some distance between Rachel and me. I had spent the last couple of days wrestling with the ramifications of her kiss, dissecting every moment we had shared since her arrival. I paced the living room, catching glimpses of Rachel through the partially open door of the kitchen. She was laughing with Mark, her laughter ringing out like music, and it made my heart ache. I wanted to be angry with her, to tell her to leave, but in truth, I felt drawn to her in ways I had never anticipated. Joanna, are you coming? Mark called out, his voice cutting through my thoughts. I forced a smile, stepping into the kitchen, just thinking about dinner. My voice was steady, but I could feel Rachel's eyes on me. Those piercing, vibrant eyes that seemed to understand everything I was feeling, even if I didn't want to admit it. Rachel was just telling me about her job, Mark said, a smile on his face, oblivious to the storm brewing within me. You should have seen her in action. She's an amazing artist. I dabble here and there, Rachel replied, brushing off the compliment with a wave of her hand, but she was radiant, her charm undeniable. I caught myself staring at her, her hair cascading over her shoulders, her smile infectious. I felt like I was drowning and I didn't know how to swim back to safety. I can't wait to see your work, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Rachel turned her gaze to me, her expression softening. Maybe I could show you some of my pieces later? I'd love your opinion. I nodded, but inside, I felt a knot of anxiety tightening. Mark didn't notice, but I could see Rachel's excitement, and it unsettled me. Sure, that sounds nice, I replied, forcing the words out. As Mark moved to set the table, I caught Rachel's gaze again. We can't keep doing this. Can we? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Rachel stepped closer, lowering her voice. Doing what? Just being sisters. There was a teasing lilt to her words, but I could hear the underlying seriousness. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. You know what I mean. This, whatever it is. It's complicated. Complicated can be thrilling, she said, her eyes gleaming with mischief. Isn't that what life is supposed to be? Not when it involves family, I countered, my heart pounding as I recalled the kiss, the warmth, the forbidden thrill. Rachel, it's not just us. What about Mark? Her expression shifted, a flicker of vulnerability crossing her features. I didn't mean to cross any lines, Joanna, but you felt it too, didn't you? The connection? This bond between us. I glanced away, unable to meet her gaze. I don't know. I can't think straight anymore. Then let me help you, Rachel said softly, stepping even closer. Let's just talk. No one else needs to know. Rachel, please, I whispered, my heart racing. I can't. Why not? She pressed, her voice barely above a whisper now, almost pleading. You're my sister. We've been through so much. I've missed you. I've missed you too, I admitted, the truth spilling out before I could stop it. But it feels like everything is falling apart. Maybe we can make sense of it together, she suggested, her eyes locked onto mine, filled with an intensity that left me breathless. Just then, Mark returned, breaking the moment. Dinner is ready, he announced cheerfully, unaware of the tension thick in the air. I forced a smile, my heart heavy with the weight of unspoken words. As we moved to the dining table, I felt Rachel's presence beside me, electric and intoxicating. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion, desire, and guilt, and I was terrified of where this path might lead. I stood frozen in the dim light of the living room, my heart pounding as Rachel's lips lingered on mine. The warmth of that kiss sent electric shivers down my spine, both exhilarating and terrifying. We had crossed a line, one that I had never anticipated crossing. And now it felt like the whole world was spinning off its axis. My thoughts raced, struggling to process what had just happened. Rachel pulled back slightly, her eyes searching mine for some sign of how I felt. "Joanna," she started, but I raised a hand to silence her, my breath catching in my throat. "Wait," I said, stepping back and shaking my head, as if that would dispel the tumult of emotions swirling inside me. "We can't do this. This isn't right." "But it felt right, didn't it?" she pressed, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a desperate hope in her eyes, mingled with a hint of fear. I swallowed hard, struggling to find words. It felt confusing. Rachel nodded slowly, her gaze dropping to the floor, a shadow of disappointment passing over her features. "I didn't mean to make things complicated, Joanna. I've missed you so much." Her confession hung heavy in the air. I could feel the weight of the past years pressing down on us, all the unspoken words and suppressed feelings. We had spent so long apart, each of us carrying our own burdens of regret and longing. Yet, I couldn't ignore the fact that I had a husband waiting for me at home, someone who trusted me. I needed to talk to Mark. The thought made my stomach twist. I had kept so much from him already, and the guilt was becoming unbearable. "I need to think," I finally said, my voice shaking. Rachel nodded, her expression unreadable. "Of course. Just don't shut me out, okay?" I turned away, needing some space to breathe. I moved to the kitchen, hoping the mundane task of pouring myself a glass of water would distract me. But instead, it just amplified my anxiety. My reflection in the glass was a reminder of the chaos brewing within me. I was on the brink of something that could shatter my life as I knew it. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Mark, his presence grounding yet complicating everything. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. I forced a smile, but it felt like a mask. "Yeah, just tired." He stepped closer, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind. "Rachel's back." "Huh?" It's got to be a lot to handle. I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "Yeah, it is. Want to talk about it?" The sincerity in his voice made my heart ache. I wanted to tell him everything, to lay bare my confusion, and the kiss that had turned my world upside down. But how could I do that without hurting him? I hesitated, my heart racing as I searched for the right words. "Maybe later," I finally said. Mark sighed, but he didn't push further. "All right, just know I'm here for you." His reassurance was both comforting and suffocating. I wanted to lean into him, to let him carry my burdens, but instead, I felt a growing chasm between us. I glanced back toward the living room, where Rachel was likely still processing our encounter. As the evening wore on, Mark surprised me with a candle at dinner. The table was set beautifully, a thoughtful gesture that made my heart swell with love and guilt simultaneously. We sat across from each other, the flickering candlelight casting a warm glow on his face. "This is nice," I said, forcing a smile. "Just wanted to do something special," he replied, his eyes sparkling with affection. "I know things have been a bit tense lately. I thought we could use some time together. Just the two of us." I nodded, feeling the weight of my secret pressing down harder. I wanted to enjoy this moment, to feel the love that had brought us together, but I couldn't shake the thoughts of Rachel from my mind. "Joanna," Mark's voice pulled me from my thoughts. "You seem distant. Everything okay?" I hesitated, the truth lying just beneath the surface. "Yeah, just thinking about Rachel." He raised an eyebrow, concern deepening in his gaze. "I understand it's a lot, but we can handle it together." I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. I wanted to tell him how much Rachel's return had stirred something inside me, something I didn't fully understand. Instead, I just nodded, smiling weakly. As we ate, I could feel the tension in my chest tightening, the weight of my internal conflict casting a shadow over the beautifully set table. Mark's laughter filled the room, but it felt distant, as if I were watching from outside my own life. In that moment, I realized I was standing at a precipice, one side leading to the familiar comfort of my marriage, and the other to the unknown territory of my feelings for Rachel. I stared at the flickering candle on the dining table, its light dancing with shadows that seemed to mock my chaotic thoughts. Rachel's presence lingered in the house like a ghost, haunting me with every breath. My heart raced as I recalled the warmth of her lips against mine just days ago, a memory that felt both intoxicating and terrifying. I had tried to push her away since that moment, yet it only seemed to pull her closer. "Joanna, are you okay?" Mark's voice broke through my thoughts, his concern evident as he leaned against the doorframe. Arms crossed. "You've been so distant lately." I forced a smile, but it felt like a fragile mask. "I'm fine, just busy with work." The lie slipped easily off my tongue, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. Busy? Or just avoiding something? His words cut deeper than I expected. I opened my mouth to protest, but no sound came out. What could I say? That I was battling feelings for my sister? "Let's just have dinner, okay?" I deflected, ushering him toward the table. The clinking of plates filled the silence, but it did little to ease the tension that hung between us. Later that evening, I met Claire at our favorite cafe, hoping to confide in her. The ambience was warm, filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, but all I felt was cold dread gnawing at my insides. "Joanna, you look like you've seen a ghost," Claire remarked as she slid into the seat across from me. Her eyes narrowed, searching mine for answers. "I've just been thinking a lot," I replied, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. "About Rachel." Her expression shifted, a knowing glint flashing in her gaze. "Thinking a lot or feeling a lot, because I've noticed you've been different since she arrived." I swallowed hard, battling the urge to confess everything. "It's complicated, Claire. I don't want to talk about it." "Joanna, you can't keep avoiding this. What's really going on?" She pressed, her voice low and steady. I hesitated, weighing my words carefully. "It's just we're trying to reconnect after all these years. It's been overwhelming." "Overwhelming how? You two were always close, weren't you?" Claire leaned in, her curiosity piqued. "Is it just nostalgia, or is there something deeper?" I felt the heat rush to my cheeks, a rush of guilt flooding my system. "I don't know. I feel confused." Claire studied me for a moment, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind. It's okay to feel confused, but whatever you're feeling toward Rachel, you need to be honest about it. Not just with her, but with yourself. Her words echoed in my mind as I left the cafe, the evening air crisp against my skin. I felt the weight of her gaze as if she could see right through my facade. I didn't want to admit it, but I was terrified of what I felt for Rachel. When I returned home, I found Rachel waiting for me in the living room, her expression tense and uncertain. "Joanna, we need to talk," she said, her voice steady yet filled with an undercurrent of desperation. "About what?" I replied, my heart racing. "About you avoiding me. It's like there's this wall between us, and I can't take it anymore." Her eyes locked onto mine, searching for a hint of reassurance. "I'm not avoiding you," I snapped, though I could hear the tremor in my own voice. I need time to process everything." "Process what?" she challenged, stepping closer. "You can't just shut me out after everything that's happened." I thought we were finally rebuilding our connection. I took a deep breath, the words bubbling up before I could stop them. "Maybe I don't know how to rebuild it, Rachel. Maybe I don't know how to deal with what happened between us." The tension in the room was palpable, her eyes widening in shock. "What do you mean by that?" "I've been thinking about that kiss. About everything. I shouted, the admission spilling out before I could contain it. And it terrifies me. It makes me question everything I thought I knew about us. Rachel's expression shifted from shock to a mix of anger and hurt. You think I wanted this to happen? I thought we could explore what's between us. I thought you felt it too. I do feel it. I cried, my voice shaking. But it's wrong, Rachel. It's all so wrong. Is it wrong because it's me? She shot back, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. It was complicated. So complicated. I don't know. I finally admitted, the weight of my confession hanging heavy in the air between us. We stood there, both shaken, the silence echoing the turmoil within us. It felt like a chasm had opened, swallowing both of us whole, and neither of us knew how to bridge it. I had barely settled into the chair when I heard Mark's footsteps echoing down the hallway. My heart raced as I clutched my phone, the screen illuminating the dark, quiet room. I had just finished texting Rachel, the tension of our last encounter still fresh in my mind. I hadn't meant to hide anything from Mark, but the weight of my emotions was suffocating, and I felt trapped in a web of secrets. "Hey, Joe," Mark said, stepping into the dim light of the living room. "You okay?" His voice was warm, laced with the concern that had become familiar to me over the past few weeks. "Yeah, just thinking," I replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. I could see his brow furrow slightly, the way it always did when he sensed something was off. He moved closer, and I could see the glow of my phone's screen reflected in his eyes. "What are you thinking about?" I hesitated, the air thick with unspoken words. "Just things with Rachel," I mumbled, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark's expression shifted, a mixture of curiosity and caution. "You two are getting closer again." "Huh?" Before I could respond, he reached for my phone, his hand brushing against mine. "Can I see?" Panic surged through me. "No, Mark. It's just I tried to snatch it back, but he was faster." He held my phone up, and I felt a cold wave wash over me as he scrolled through our messages. "What the hell, Joe?" His voice was sharp, cutting through the tension like a knife. "What is this?" I felt my stomach drop as I realized I was cornered. I took a deep breath, trying to find the strength to explain myself. "It's not what you think," I began, but my voice trembled, betraying my resolve. "Not what I think. It looks like you've been having some pretty intimate conversations with Rachel." He shot back, his eyes filled with disbelief and hurt. "Why didn't you tell me?" I didn't know how, Mark. I didn't mean for it to happen." I stammered, each word feeling like a stone weighing down my heart. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Complicated is an understatement. You're my wife, Joanna, and you're talking to your sister like this? What about us?" I could feel the walls closing in, suffocating me. "I didn't want to hurt you. I was trying to figure things out. Rachel, she's just been there for me in a way that I didn't expect. I thought we were rebuilding our relationship. Rebuilding? Or destroying ours?" He stepped back, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "You're choosing her over me, aren't you?" I opened my mouth to protest, but the truth hung heavily in the air. I didn't know what I wanted anymore. Rachel's kiss had ignited something deep within me, something I had buried for so long. But Mark, he was my rock, my partner. "I don't know, Mark. I don't know what to choose." From the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of Rachel standing at the doorway, her face pale and stricken with betrayal. I hadn't even realized she had been listening. The sight of her made my heart ache. "Rachel," I gasped, my voice breaking. Mark turned, and his eyes widened as he saw her. "You," he exclaimed, anger spilling over. "You've been manipulating her, haven't you?" "No, Mark, that's not true." Rachel stepped forward, her voice shaky yet firm. "I didn't." "Stay out of this," he snapped, cutting her off. The tension in the room was palpable, a storm brewing in the space between us. In that moment, Something shifted in Mark's expression. "You know what? I've had enough of this," he said, his voice steadying as he faced me. "I've known about your connection with Rachel for a while now, and I've been meeting with her." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. What? My mind raced, struggling to process the revelation. "You knew all along?" Mark nodded, his gaze unflinching. "I wanted to understand what was happening between you two. I didn't want to jump to conclusions." I felt the ground beneath me crumble. I was standing at a crossroads, and the weight of betrayal pressed down on my chest. "You were meeting her?" My voice was a whisper, barely escaping my lips. "I had to know, Joanna. I didn't want to lose you," he confessed, his vulnerability cutting through the tension. I looked between Mark and Rachel, both of whom I loved in different ways, both of whom had betrayed me in their own right. I felt utterly lost, teetering on the edge of a precipice with no clear way down. What was I supposed to do now? The choices stretched before me like a labyrinth, each turn leading to uncertainty. As the room fell silent, I stood there, torn between the past and the present, contemplating the weight of my next move. The darkness enveloped me, the screen fading to black, leaving my heart racing with questions that had no answers.